Good evening, Great Debate League. My name is Ebony Johnson, one of the GDL commissioners, along with Professor AJ Lowe and tonight's moderator, Dr. Mutor Flood. We debated GDL19 with Dr. Bruce Strobel Jr. and Emmanuel Lewis on the United States of America is fundamentally a racist nation. Uh, I know a lot of people came into this debate with preconceived notions, as always, and ideas and thoughts of what we agree with and what we don't agree with. But what we want to highlight mostly, we're grateful for people to take the affirmative and negative on the debates. And so what we want to highlight mostly is how each debater performed. AJ and Mutor, you want to, AJ especially because this is your area as far as a historian. If Speaking of historical facts, you know the Constitution hands down, etc. Bruce brought that up in his opening statement. Can you take us through your views on how well they performed in the opening statement and anywhere else you want to go to? But I want to start there.
One of the things that I had noticed about the debate, well, I already know that Dr. Strobel is pretty well versed in the Constitution of the United States. One of the things that stood out to me in this debate is how Mr. Lewis he diverted when Bruce brought up the Constitution and the creation of the Constitution and the creation of the 3/5, which absolutely has everything to do with race. It has everything to do with race as far as how people will be counted as far as like the numbers of votes or numbers of representatives, as far as representation, as far as taxation, as far as so many things that the Constitution like represents, and pretty much the Constitution goes and pretty much defines things like race in the Constitution, especially in regards to things like the 3/5 clause. He also, I mean, he could have went with the Native Americans because it specifically says several times in the Constitution that Native Americans are explicitly they're not involved in this. So to say that the Constitution isn't racist, that's a stretch.
Do you feel that his argument, and Mutor, you can chime in here as well. One of the things that we were talking about just off stage is that, you know, as far as Emmanuel, what I understood and heard from Emmanuel's argument is that his understanding, even though they agreed to a definition of fundamentally, his understanding is that you cannot say that racism is the one core reason. And they were kind of going back and forth on that. And Bruce was saying, well, everything, nothing basically exists in isolation. However, for Emmanuel, I felt throughout the debate, he was saying you cannot statistically prove that racism alone is the fundamental core and basis of the United States. And that was the argument to me that he stayed with.
So there are two things that I as a in the debate that I had kind of an issue with or trying to work my head around, because it seems like they were both answering the question from totally different perspectives, which is fundamental to a debate. Mm-hmm. But at times they were answering different questions, right? Mm-hmm. So Bruce is answering it as it's posited with the definition. Fundamental doesn't denote that something is unitary, that is only one thing. Mm-hmm. So what Emmanuel was going to was again the theory of essentialism. The things have essential component. But what he kind of failed to realize is that things can be essential and have multiple aspects to it. So let's give you something like water. Water is wet. You can swim in water. Water is a liquid. These are essential properties of water, right? There are multiple qualities of the thing that we are looking at, whether it be a category or a construct of sorts. So to pin his argument on essentialism and saying that, hey, essentialism can only mean one thing, well, that doesn't follow.
Well, he said to him fundamentally only, like, because we said base core, that he's saying his interpretation is that Bruce is saying his argument is that racism is the one base.
Right, but at a number of points in the discussion, he used the term essential as you know as a
saying that
proxy.
this is the only we had. He actually said, "Look, we got to pick one," and Bruce was like, "No, we don't really have to pick one.
You don't have to pick one at all."
Which it was interesting to me because I feel as though even though we agree to parameters and definitions, before as the debates are getting set up, that everyone still falls back on their personal understanding at some point. Like it's in those understandings, even though definitions have been agreed to, there still are differences in understandings of those agreed upon definitions. In this case, like I really wasn't thinking that necessarily in the pre-debate negotiations that Emmanuel would, that they will both be in the debate and one person is saying, well, I don't mean one thing when I say base, and the other person is saying, it's like, oh, okay, for us, just as far as what are you really saying that you understand this definition to mean? So it's interesting because if you ask 50 different people, you can get 50 different perspectives, and everybody will say they right based on their point of view.
Right.
But from a debate performance though, who do you feel follow through based on their logic, not what we agreed to, but based on their logic? How did you feel about the follow through based on what each of them thought themselves?
I'll say that Bruce pretty much went out there and he did his job. I would say that Emmanuel fell short just a couple of times because Bruce posed some impossible questions to him that were very difficult to like for example, the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. That was going to be impossible to counteract. Also, he threw out there a question that I was like, oh yeah, you can't give. The question was, when was America not racist?
Yeah.
You cannot, no one, even the rightest of the far rightest cannot say.
Well, no. Actually, the rightest of the far rightest will go, hey, racism ended with the passage of the
Barack Obama
Civil Rights Act, in the 60s. And that was the end of legal racism in America. They'll say that. I've heard them say that.
Well, put it like this. A seasoned right-wing supporter wouldn't say that. Usually most of them go to the election of Obama. It's like,
oh yeah, that too.
End all be all.
Well, but one of the things Emmanuel did, he wasn't saying his argument that America is not racist. He said it is. He just said that he doesn't think that's the one base core and that there is no statistical way to prove that.
And Bruce showed
actually he agreed that America is racist. He just kept saying that you can't statistically approve this one thing. But again, he was using base to say one thing, and Bruce was not using base to say it's the only one thing.
And one of the things that Bruce does, and we always talk about this, is statistics. He brought statistics mm-hmm. at the end, and also
in the beginning.
The constitutional argument about racism is absolutely there.
Yeah,
I say that because I've read the Constitution several times. I'm well versed in the Constitution, so I know exactly what it says, and it's mm-hmm. absolutely in there. I mean, you don't even have to just say this for Black people. You can just use it for like Native Americans, where there are several times in the Constitution where the Constitution actually says that Native Americans are excluded.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the statistics part, because he referenced essentially setting up a study with multiple regression, right? And so I just want to talk as somebody, I teach statistics, right? Mm-hmm. So when he talked about multiple regression, there are going to be a number of variables put in to see what their effect is on the outcome variable, right? And so those multiple variables could be, in fact, racism, sexism, ageism, etc., homophobic tendencies, etc. And those will culminate to see how that affects the outcome variable. Now, multiple regression in and of itself is a correlational study, so it would not provide a causal statement such as racism is fundamentally a U.S. is a fundamentally racist country. But you can set up studies where you could do an analysis, and then you could also, within that experimental design, you could as an add-on do some kind of multiple regression analysis and find out just how much of a contributing factor racism is to America's foundation. And so I just thought that was a really interesting kind of thing. He wanted to say correlation is not causation, and that is true. But you can do studies to prove that America is a fundamentally racist country, and it's a plethora. So that's what I was saying. Yeah, it was a really interesting point to kind of go off on.
I mean, we have examples right now. The example which I noticed I didn't really, I was in and out in the beginning, but I noticed that law enforcement didn't come up, because if we can prove racism with the law enforcement, the reaction with law enforcement, right? How if we have an active shooter or a suspect with a gun, 9 times out of 10, well, I'll say 7 times out of 10, that black person is not going to survive that. Where it's 50-50 or maybe even 60-40 that they're going to survive that. That a white person doing the same thing with the gun will survive those situations.
Is there anything that you all, from a debater performance standpoint, would have liked to see more of or differently from each debater?
I would have said the statistics, but Bruce dropped those at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he also had them in the beginning, the statistics.
Yeah, but the majority of them, the majority of his statistics came at the end. I was waiting for it, and then it was like satisfying at the end.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of statistic could the brother Emmanuel have.
Man, that's the problem. That's the problem. Is that we can't, I'm curious to see what kind of statistics he would have brought out as well. What would he?
I'm guessing in to prove what his point was, he could have pulled out.
You don't have statistics, yeah.
Well, no. He could have put out a study that said, hey, at America's founding, it was founded as a democracy, which is a land owning gentry who could have voting rights, and you could say, well, that's inherently sexist, whereas slaves weren't as big a factor at that. Well, you could have done a whole lot of things with that. I don't know if it would have helped his case out at all, because again,
because we're stretching.
I honestly feel as though his ultimate case.
I'm trying to see how that would
work. I feel as though his ultimate case was he considered fundamental to be, this is the one foundation. And in that scenario, you cannot say that this is the one foundation of America. Mm-hmm. However, Bruce kept saying, I'm not saying it's just one, but I'm saying it is a part of us fundamentally at our core. So I felt like it got wrapped into that difference in understanding.
And one of the things I want Mr. Lewis to walk away with is that when you build a house, your structural frame of the house is not just dependent on one beam. It's dependent on several beams. So when we start talking about the structure of the United States, it's not dependent on one thing like racism. It's dependent on several things in order to create to create this house, and then to make sure that this house is running and operating smoothly.
Mutor, will you pull up the scorecard for us, please? We have some responses that have come in, and we want to share those. And
while he's doing it, I want to say thank you to Mr. Lewis for participating as well.
Yes, definitely.
And you know what? As his first time, he came out there. I've noticed that he came out there a little bit more prepared than most people on their first attempt.
And he actually seemed pretty confident. He seemed pretty calm and ready to, to state his case. Even with the lightning round, he jumped in first, and asked Bruce questions and stuck in there. So he did, as far as, his ability to communicate his own thinking and go back and forth and maintain, he was able to do that.
And
I'm not sure how well people can see this, but can you just go through the feedback that we have so far? and still share it, but go through the feedback
Yeah,
for us.
I'm trying to get that one on the screen.
Okay.
Mr. Lewis seemed very relaxed. There only one time that he seemed kind of flustered. It was visible that he was kind of flustered. All right, let's see what this is looking like.
So yes, so it looks like, let me go back up to the top. So it looks like when it comes to fact-based arguments, most of the voters thought that Bruce had superior fact-based arguments, where where others didn't score Emmanuel Lewis as being that high in that particular category. When it came to subject matter expertise, again, Bruce scored pretty high, and Emmanuel scored from anywhere from 2 to 1 on that category. When it came to persuasiveness, the gap shortened us a little bit. Bruce still, remained strong in that category, but Mr. Lewis wasn't that far behind.
I think this is what I noticed interesting, elocution.
Yeah, when it comes to elocution, which I think all of us here thought that elocution-wise, Emmanuel Lewis did an excellent job. He was well prepared, just like Bruce Strobel is, Dr. Strobel was. But I think he did a fantastic job on elocution. He was calm, comfortable with his points that he wanted to get out, and so that shows in the ratings where this is much closer. Bruce is still higher, but Emmanuel Lewis is around a 3.5 in this. Now, when it came to defense and rebuttals, Bruce still performed pretty well on this. Emmanuel Lewis, not so much, because he did kind of dodge some of these questions that Dr. Strobel had asked him. So I think that might have had an effect on the grading on this particular item. And so let's go to the winner of the debate. So we have, for the affirmative, 80% of our voters voted for Bruce Strobel winning, and 20% voted for Emmanuel Lewis winning. So we have Bruce Strobel as our winner for this debate.
Congratulations, Bruce.
Congratulations, Bruce.
Well done.
I look forward to seeing Emmanuel do this again, though, because with the calm nature of the way he posed his argument, the way he was able to, like I said, only saw him get physically flustered one time, but he seemed very comfortable. He seemed very relaxed. He didn't seem like he was anxious. I look forward to seeing him go again. Absolutely. I look forward to seeing him debate again.
And specifically on perhaps some of his other ideas that he has, even like his own ideas where he can argue the affirmative and have, various supporting materials, because one of the things he shared with us before the debate, Mutor, I don't know if you recall what he referred to himself as from a political standpoint.
I believe it was called an ethnocrat.
Yeah, an ethnocrat. So it would be interesting. It would be interesting if Emmanuel, if you're watching this, if he poses some of his own premises that he would like to argue the affirmative for, and our ability to find a good match for it. It could be, a different debate.
I'd like to see his next debate. I'd like to see what he's going to do. I think his next debate is going to really show up.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, thank you again to everybody for watching tonight. We appreciate you all for being with us and taking time to continue to participate. We invite you to join the league. You can join us on our Facebook page, The Great Debate League. Also, we have a group, The Great Debate League, and YouTube as well, The Great Debate League, Inc. Go ahead, Mutor.
I'm sorry, Ebony. We have some comments from our viewers. Want to give them a shout out. You can post some of them.
Okay. Familiario said fundamental does not equal only. It can be part of and still be fundamental. Brian Thorne says, I think AJ used the best metaphor with the house.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah. Thank you, Mutor, for that.
I
So,
was trying to do it with water, but it wasn't working. But Professor AJ got the house down packed.
all good. We appreciate you all again for watching. Everybody take care. Again, we invite you to join the league. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify. You can listen to our podcast. We're at our website, thegreatdebateleague.com. Just check us out. And we really do encourage you to participate to debate. We have a format. A whole setup. There is a negotiation that goes on beforehand, and as you can tell, even in negotiations, people still can come away with different understandings after the fact. But that's the fun in us doing this in debate. So we appreciate y'all. Everybody, take care and have a great night.